Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video, and with the big start of James Gunn's new, emphasis on new, Universe reboot quickly approaching us, that of course starting in the middle of July this year, just under 4 months from now with the release of Superman. There is a decent amount of excitement for that, as well as what is to possibly come after it in this ever-expanding universe, fingers crossed, hopefully. Of course, there is a lot of curiosity and predictions on what will happen with certain heroes specifically and when they will show up first and how they will be portrayed and all that stuff. But another line of thinking comes with, the other side of things, or the other side of the coin, the villains and how they will be portrayed. With Superman, the film itself giving us a taste of both worlds, where it looks like we'll be getting a somewhat, if not very accurate Lex Luthor, but then there's a character like Ultraman. It's a different alternate take, and there could be some twists and turns, like maybe Ultraman is actually this character, but then again, that character that Ultraman actually is also a bit different from what they are in the comics. And that could be setting the foundations for what to expect in this DC universe, with the villains specifically, a mix of classic takes as well as updated / alternate takes when it comes to villains. And, maybe even the heroes. We'll have to wait and see. Of course, we don't have a large playing field there in regards to that, but that could be the case with the heroes as well. In this video, I wanted to focus in on technically 2 characters, but 1 mantle, and how each of these characters could be potentially used in the DCU, as well as introduced, and possible changes that could be made, with it maybe leaning into what I was just saying with the whole Lex and Ultraman thing, where you get like sort of 1 accurate for the most part classic take, and then 1 alternate / reinvention of the character. But of course, throughout the video, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts on this and what you would want to see. I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to say. And of course, if you're going to enjoy the video, drop a like. It takes 2 seconds. So of course, Reverse Flash. It's in the title. Let's not, beat around the bush. The arch nemesis of the Flash. But it is a name that is commonly attached to 2 different people, depending if the first user is relevant at the time or not. These 2, of course, being Eobard Thawne, aka Professor Zoom, aka the OG, and then of course Hunter Zolomon, aka Zoom, the successor. Of course, due to the CW Flash show and even some of the recent comics as well, when Reverse Flash is said or mentioned, it is directly attributed to Eobard Thawne as to who is being referenced, like the vast majority of the time, while Hunter Zolomon is Zoom. Though Thawne is still called Professor Zoom from time to time. It's a bit confusing, I guess, but how could James Gunn's DCU use these 2 characters and just the concept of the Reverse Flash as a whole? Well, let's talk about it. So I want to start with Thawne, Eobard Thawne. It makes sense to start with him, and with this one it's pretty simple. Even though there might be a call for there to be a reinvention, like this to be the one where there's a reinvention there, I think with this character, especially if Barry Allen is the specific Flash and he's going to be a Barry Allen villain, I think you have to go with the classic take. I think that's the way you got to go about it. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to rip every single thing from the comic as it is going to be in the film whenever that happens with this character. But I think like the core of the character has to be that classic take, like his actual origin. So he's from the future. He worships the Flash. The Flash is his hero. Then through, him trying to replicate that whole process and become the Flash himself or become a speedster himself, he feels betrayed when the Flash sort of takes his moment in the spotlight, and it becomes this life mission of revenge. It becomes full circle where, his hero, he now becomes the villain to that hero. This, of course, leading to the point where he kills Barry's mum, Nora Allen, and then becomes the Flash's greatest rival. And, we know where it goes from there and everything involved there, and where, potentially can go, even with, new things added. But the biggest thing with a character like Eobard Thawne, and if he is the Reverse Flash, is that you would probably, I think actually most likely, have to try something new with him in some regard, whilst, keeping it classic. You still have to stay classic for the most part and keep the, as I said before, like the core things with the character there. But just because of this one thing, I think you have to, and that's just due to the character being not just in the TV show for 9 seasons. I know he wasn't in every single season, but he was such a constant throughout it, and there was so much stuff explored with him there. But also the animated stuff, like the animated movies, and I think even some TV shows, and even if you want to include a video game like Injustice, or it was Injustice 2, I think specifically, that Reverse Flash is in, like the Eobard Thawne version. So there's those different takes there where, they've sort of already been explored. Like I know there's going to be a heavy leaning on when it comes to like the TV show specifically and the job that was done there, but I think that's where you would look to maybe go a different path with certain aspects, like not the entire thing, but just certain aspects when it comes to the character, as well as his own story, but also his relationship with Barry Allen, or the rivalry and the antagonistical actions that he does towards Barry Allen. Or the big thing is that you take something that was maybe like hinted at or done in like a really small way with like whether it was in the TV show or some of the other stuff, and you expand beyond it. Like one thing that I've seen a lot of people reference that they could easily do a really cool, whether it's just one movie storyline or even like an overarching thing, even potentially with the entire DCU, which was, I think was like even something that was hinted that might have even been planned for the DCEU, though I don't know if it really would have worked, is that Reverse Flash is part of all these little moments. Like, there's a whole thing with like Barry, like, oh, Barry fell down the stairs when he was 11 years old. Oh, it's actually Reverse Flash. He pushed him or tripped him down the stairs. You could do something like that and expand on it in a much bigger way, especially maybe if you did it with a more experienced Barry Allen, like maybe he's been the Flash for maybe up to 10 years, but he still maybe hasn't encountered the Reverse Flash in a major personal way, or at least he doesn't know specifically that Reverse Flash did these things to him when he was younger. So that's something you could expand beyond. It would make it different than some of the previous iterations and adaptations with the character, but also be something that people would want to see and enjoy. It just depends if you balance it correctly, I think. Now, the big thing with Thawne that will be different than Hunter Zolomon, I'll mention it here, is that Thawne, I think, could still work as a Wally West villain. So if Wally West is the Flash, I still think you could use the Eobard Thawne Reverse Flash. I don't think it will be able to be done the other way, where Barry could verse Hunter Zolomon and he's the Reverse Flash, but I think Thawne could still be a Wally West villain. Maybe. I know you might disagree with that, but I think it would still work. You'd obviously rather it be Thawne and Barry and Hunter Zolomon and Wally, but I think the only time you can sort of mix them up is Thawne with Wally. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe you disagree, let me know. But speaking of Hunter Zolomon, let's move into him. Clearly, Wally West villain. As I said before, I don't think it would work overly well. I think there'd maybe be some like not plot holes, but like some things you'd have to jump over to make it work if it was Hunter Zolomon was Barry Allen's villain, at least if you want to do like a certain like faithful adaptation. But this is the character where I think it's very open to being reinvented from the comic origin. I don't think people are ridiculously attached to the Hunter Zolomon origin from the comic. It's very much just its own thing. It's not this like over like full loop thing. Like, yes, Wally's involved or partakes in how Hunter Zolomon becomes Zoom, but I don't think it's like this big connection like with Eobard Thawne and Barry Allen, and almost being like this chicken and egg situational scenario. So I think you can reinvent his comic origin. If you don't know his comic origin, essentially Hunter Zolomon's, it's actually very similar to the TV show. If you saw this TV show The Flash with there, but just like obviously they did like an Earth 2 take on it, but his father is a serial killer who kills his mother, and then after being paralyzed by Grodd, he tries to use the cosmic treadmill to go back in time because Wally refuses to, and he decides to do it himself. And he wants to undo his injuries that he got from Grodd, but this causes an explosion which gives him his powers. And he is a speedster, but it's different. He more like slows down time. It's time manipulation rather than super speed. So I think that's something you might still keep potentially, but I think a really cool concept you could do with the character of Hunter Zolomon is make him, even if you want to keep his father's a serial killer, but I think you could sort of like combine them where maybe like his parents and stuff don't really play into what happens here, but he himself, Hunter Zolomon, is a copycat killer, and he bases his image and powers off Reverse Flash, like the Eobard Thawne version, whether it's intentional or not to start off with. I think you could really make it where he doesn't really go into it intending to be this copycat killer, but then he becomes this copycat after an incident similar to the comics, where he gets powers from an explosion, maybe of something like a cosmic treadmill, or maybe him just experimenting himself, or maybe he gets caught with something like this chemicals and the Flash runs past, something weird like that. It's a comic book goddamn movie. You can do whatever weird crap you want to give someone powers if you really want to, but I think making him this copycat killer, combining some of that stuff with his father from the comics and stuff like that, and just making him a bit different than like your standard Reverse Flash. And yes, that technically does lean into the Zoom aspect from the show because he was a serial killer, but he was a serial killer before he got his powers. So he was just a serial killer who got powers. This is a guy that's just becomes that after the power incident, which I think would be an interesting thing, especially if you like messed with his mind. But I think if you did that, you'd have to make it where he has a purpose as to why he's killing and who he's killing as well. Because I think when I watch certain things and they have like a serial killer or like a murderer that's going around doing stuff, I think if they have a purpose, it's easier to sort of like believe why they don't kill certain people and why they do. Because you just be like, they're walking through and they'll just let these 5 people survive, and then they'll go down the other road and they'll kill the next 5 people they see. It's like, hold on, where's the consistency? And I think if you add a motive or a purpose behind why they're doing certain things, it adds consistency there. So I think it would be interesting if you added something to his backstory about, you know, people who maybe it's their job to protect people and stuff like that, whether it's cops or whether it's first responders or just people that are in like positions of power but have failed to do that. Or if you even add like a nice little like twist in there, like a, you know, with the whole concept of the, you know, the flash and speed and stuff like that, people that were too slow and that were lazy on their jobs, and maybe that's who he targets. That could get a bit like controversial, I guess, maybe, but I think if you picked it the right way and you know, thought through the various actions that he's going through, I don't think it would be too offensive. At least I don't think so. But then again, I think it's probably like maybe a touchy area. I'm not too sure. But I think that base thing, not necessarily like, you know, who he targets, whatever, you can decide that after. But I think the base idea of him being this copycat killer, serial killer type thing, I think adds a bit of a, you know, bit of juice to the character and makes him stand out differently than Eobard Thawne, who really has this just vengeful thing for Barry Allen. You know, Hunter Zolomon's like a different, you know, different thing on his own. Like he's targeting multiple people, and just specifically for what reason, that would be the thing to find out. Now, in regards to who is the better choice, because that's the big thing, we have 2 choices here, and they only, like, if they make a Flash movie, they have to choose, they can only choose one, and maybe this plays into the part of who they pick with Barry Allen or Wally West, like who's the reverse Flash option you go with. And I think in regards to like reliability, maybe, and probably success rate, maybe, of people going along with it and enjoying it, you'd probably go with Thawne. But for something different and just seeing what could be done, Hunter Zolomon would be very cool as well, especially if he is, as I said before, this like serial killing speed star, basing his actions off Eobard Thawne's reverse Flash as well. You can please 2 parties there possibly. But while Thawne could sort of work with the Wally as the Flash, as I said before, though you would prefer Barry to be in that conflict with Thawne, if it is Hunter Zolomon, it has to be Wally's Flash. That's at least in my opinion. I think Wally has to be with Hunter, but I think Wally can be with Thawne if the story's done correctly. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like on it to show support. Let me know in the comment section down below your various opinions and everything we went over. Always curious to read what you guys are thinking. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.